And thanks, Marion, for asking me to do this session. So I've been lucky enough in having been involved in quite a number of disruptions, I guess you could say, or innovation waves in technology over the last sort of 16, 17 years. So I started out in the music business, developing and promoting artists. And then I became a journalist, reporting on the impact of the internet on the media and the music business, which was very fascinating at the time. And then I joined the mobile revolution. Obviously, you're in mobile as well, Marion. That was fascinating. There, I was developing music streaming products and video products, which at the time was really innovative. Now we all take it for granted. But it was very, very new. Then the convergence wave in the mid-2000s, when content was going across IPTV, mobile, web, fixed line. I think for some people, convergence is quite an old word. And then the app revolution in New York. So that was in Paris. So the content stuff was in Paris. That's when we were doing quad play deals. And these were deals with content providers and film music companies, and just making sure that the content was available across multiple devices. And then the app revolution in New York, obviously working to launch the Nokia App Store. Not obviously at the time the coolest app store. And now, the startup renaissance that you're seeing across cities and countries, where you're seeing digital technology being a driver of job creation. Here in London, but also right across Europe and in other parts of Southeast Asia and the US.
Okay, so we'll be adding more information about your background throughout the talk. What I didn't mention to you is that Gerard is also on the board of Barbican, right?
Yes, that's right.
Which is right next to us.
Yeah.
So you have, there's an artist side to you. You started with music. And you also helped sign up a few interesting musicians, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I came out of university. I actually studied acoustic engineering. Not sure how many people really understand what that is, but that's perhaps the application of mathematics to wave theory and sound theory. So I was very keen to be an engineer that designs theaters at the time. And then I realized that there were probably not that many jobs in that space. Only so many theaters are built, concert theaters are so many, only so many are built per year in each country. So I just joined the music business, and I thought that was great. I learned a lot about the music business. And specifically when I was in the business that I was in, I learned a lot about how not to run a company. I think what you learn in the music business is how to hustle, how to make sure that you stay relevant. There's a great saying in the music business, which is, you're only as good as your last hit. Which says a lot. So you have to constantly innovate. But yeah, that's right. So, the Barbican is one of the largest art centers in Europe. It has, 6 cinemas, 7 cinemas, 2 concert halls, an art gallery, a conservatory. So yeah, it's right here on your doorstep.
Okay, so then you joined the music side, and then you joined the music side of a telecom company, Orange.
Yes, right. So I was group head of music and video at Orange, launching products right across multiple territories, mainly in Europe, about 15 countries. So dealing with different payment systems, dealing with different content systems, management systems. I mean, clearly that has changed. I think if you look at what was going on about 10 years ago versus now, it is much easier to go global than it was then. Payment systems are much more standardized, content systems are much more standardized. But at the time, you were just dealing with lots of different payment systems, and that can be quite tiring when you're launching a product. So, yeah, I mean, dealing with music streaming for the first time over GPRS and 3G, which we now take for granted again. And now we're dealing with 4G and 5G and LTE. But at the time, it was truly innovative. We were just testing and launching all these great products and seeing how the take-up was going. So again, and also dealing with lots of startups at the time who were dealing with serving content on different devices. Mm-hmm. I think, we all know that the iPhone, you've got iOS, which again, standardized content development. At the time when you were dealing with dozens and dozens of different phone manufacturers with different rendering systems for content, there was a lot of friction in the system in developing content for mobile phones.
Yeah. So before I ask you about some question regarding the telco business, there's a question here on Slido. If you guys want to jump in and ask some questions, feel free to just go to slido.com, and the hashtag which we used for tonight is SGEurope. You don't need anything, just open your browser on your phone. No need to type in any login or password, just slido.com, hashtag is SGEurope, and ask away. Please ask relevant questions to today's debate. There's a question here a while ago, Gerard, that the UK economy is the second or eighth best digital economy in the world.
Second or eighth?
Somebody suggested eighth, so let's clarify that.
It depends. I think there are different reports out there, but I think the one to note is one from the OECD that was done with McKinsey late last year. That actually the UK's, so the digital contribution to overall GDP in the UK is about 10%.
Okay.
The second highest is the US, 8%, and the third highest is Sweden with 7%. So that's pretty impressive, and there's a number of reasons for that. It's obviously the climate in terms of the regulatory environment, but also it's the people have a higher propensity to adopt digital services. So even when I was in group in Paris, we always noted that the UK had the highest adoption of digital services and was always the first country to test out products. Sometimes after Sweden. Sweden was always very high.
Okay.
And it constantly is the case now that the UK does very well. And I think we have the highest e-commerce per capita in the world.
Okay.
But Russia is, sorry, I beg your pardon, China is obviously coming up the ranks quite quickly.
Thanks for clarifying. Now, going back to the original question of telco, what you might not know, I've met Gerard at Orange. We used to both work for Orange, and we didn't meet, I think the first proper discussion we had, I don't know if you remember this is like 2007, and we have Dan Keegan in the room. Dan, where are you? He's over there. And this is crazy story where Dan and I, we had an Orange event in Orlando, in Florida, and Dan and I, we rented out this automatic car, and none of us have driven automatic before, so it was quite a journey. And then we've met, we arranged a dinner with Gerard in Orlando. Do you remember that? We had like a nice, quiet dinner. A nice take. That's where we had like proper discussion about music and where the world is heading. This is 2007, and if you remember, Apple was just coming out with the iPhone.
Yeah.
And you've been sitting at interesting tables where history was made. You signed up the MySpace deal for Orange France Telecom. You signed up Bebo, Facebook as well.
Yep.
Can you tell us what are your learnings from signing big deals like that?
I mean, how many people here basically run a SaaS business or a B2B business? Okay. B2C consumer business, or thinking of launching one? Okay. So I think, dealing with big companies can be a challenge. But I think if you find startup champions inside big companies, you can go very far very quickly. But the decision-making process in different companies, and especially in big companies, can be quite complicated. But with Facebook, when I remember meeting Facebook in 2006, the mission then was very much to be like electricity. They really were thinking as a platform. I mean, now again, we take these things for granted, but at the time, they were very visionary in terms of making sure that they were plugging in developers, they were plugging in content providers that would then eventually attract the advertisers.
How many of you have been using Facebook in 2006? I wasn't. So you've met them and talked to them even before we were on it.
Yeah. And obviously now, I don't know if you saw the announcements from Phase 8 last week, but really fascinating announcements about augmented reality, AR, VR stuff. Again, these are new platforms where they're going to obviously attracting developers to develop new content, new experiences, and but yes, at the time it was extremely innovative, and yeah, the deal was tough. I mean, they had very specific ways in which they did business, and I was dealing with French lawyers and British lawyers, and also within the EU legislation framework. Yeah, things took a lot longer than we expected, but we got there, and we were one of the first to strike the deal with Facebook.
Do you have any tips for us regarding negotiations? So I'm sure you guys have businesses which you would like to get to the next level, and signing a partnership is important. What are some do's and don'ts when you negotiate a big deal?
I think always go in there. Obviously, this is going to be very obvious, but always go in there with a win-win partnership, because it's not about the deal. It's about what happens after the deal. The deal will get tough. There will be long nights, but then it's about how can you actually visualize success? Can you visualize the deal in operation with the partner that you're doing the deal with? Because that ultimately is what counts. An agreement is there to sit on a shelf in case things go wrong. So it obviously needs to be thorough, but someone in the negotiating on the negotiating side has to be very positive and optimistic.
Yeah.
And then clearly your lawyer will be quite pessimistic deliberately and challenging you. But you need to basically make sure that you both see success in the same way, because if you have any, be honest, because then you're actually stuck with the deal. But I've seen deals that were tough but fair, and were extremely productive and very fruitful for both parties. Yeah.
That's useful. So you left Orange, France Telecom, and then you went to work for Nokia in New York?
In New York, yeah, that's right, yeah.
And you helped set up the global app store for Nokia?
Yeah, so we were a very small team.
This is after the App Store of Apple launched?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just after
Okay.
Apple launched their store, and we put a team together and launched the Nokia App Store. And yeah, we launched. I guess at the time we weren't the coolest, perhaps, but we were definitely the largest in terms of number of countries that we were in. So we had this crazy idea of launching in 192 countries, pretty much simultaneously over 92 hours.
Wow.
So it was quite intense, but we were making sure the recommendation engine was working, the way the content was rendering on different devices at different times of the day, and making sure that the languages were translating in the right way when people, obviously fired up the app. So yeah, but again, dealing with different payment systems, and in some countries, again, we take payment for granted here, mobile content payment for granted, in-app billing and everything. But in some countries, that's still developing. In some cases, you're dealing with SMS as a way of payment.
And you brought it all the way from launch from scratch to 1 million downloads a day to 28 million, if I'm correct?
Yeah. I think by the time I left, a number of us left. It was 28
daily
million.
downloads.
Daily downloads, yeah,
Not bad.
28 million. Yeah. It was it was good. It was good fun.
And
very
how
good
did
fun,
you-
good culture.
How do you end up then from Nokia at Tech City UK?
Yeah, I mean, I think I joined Nokia Ventures as entrepreneur in residence. Nokia Ventures is a $900 million venture fund in Nokia, still going now in Nokia, just specializing in mobile startups, or obviously, again, mobile first. When I talk about mobile first, I'm talking about companies like Snapchat, which is really it's not mobile first, it's just a mobile company.
It's a camera company.
Yeah, it doesn't even, you can't even register on the web via desktop, I think. So Nokia Ventures, I was very keen to make sure that we were investing in the best companies possible at the time. But then I was in New York. I remember getting an email in New York. I was walking down Bryant Park, and this email came through asking me if I would be interested in joining Tech City UK.
Who asked you?
And, sorry?
Who asked you?
Oh, the company that was doing the recruitment.
Okay.
And I was very interested. I mean, there I was thinking that New York is one. Who's from New York? Anyone from New York? Anyone from the US? Not many people.
A few.
Okay. I thought I was, living and working in the best city, the most cultural city, I guess the most international city. But actually, to be honest with you, a lot of the action was happening in London at the time. Tech City launched in 2011, and there was a real groundswell of excitement around what was happening in startups in the UK. And clearly, we're now seeing a lot of those results. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to apply and get through and see if I could move the family back to London, because actually the rate of growth of startup creation was higher here than in most places at the time. And so that was exciting, and I was really thrilled. And
What was the thinking? Why would you accept working for a government organization?
we're not a government organization, but so for some of you who may not know the history of Tech City, at the time it was announced by the then Prime Minister David Cameron, and it was within the Department of International Trade. And when I joined, we took it out of government and is now an independent organization with a separate board. So we have Eileen Burbidge from Passion Capital, Robin Klein from Local Globe, X-Index. We have Wendy from Entrepreneur First on the board.
Yeah.
So we have a separate board, and we get a grant from government to do what we think is right to develop ecosystems here in the UK, and we complement that with sponsorship money and money from workshops that we run as well.
Okay, so you joined and you took it out of the government. Now you're independent. When you joined, what were your key objectives at the time, and how did it change over time till today?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Tech City at the time was very much focused on this part of town, and that was always going to be the case, because obviously you've got high density, high critical mass of companies, but it was important to look at what else was going on around the country. If you look at Cambridge has been a digital or a tech hub for many years, and I don't know if you remember the ARM exit last year, but that sold for £24 billion. I mean, a lot of my American friends...
$30 billion, yes, it's the biggest exit in Europe in tech.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of my American friends were not even aware of such a company could exist in parts.
Do you guys know the ARM company?
Yeah.
So ARM is basically in 95% of smartphones. It's a chip maker. It's in the UK, 30 billion exit to SoftBank. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, so that was happening in Cambridge, and that spun out of Cambridge University. And obviously that's created a cohort of very wealthy individuals that will probably very likely invest in the next generation of UK entrepreneurs. But so when I took over Tech City UK, it was important that we were connecting all the other hubs as well. And you may or may not have heard of Tech Nation, but this was very important to launch as a yearly report where we basically showcase the best of what's going on in digital technology around the country. So who would have known that Malvern is a cybersecurity hub? There you go. That was like, so I mean, you have over 200 startups there in cybersecurity, and the reason for that is because they're very close in proximity, in physical proximity to GCHQ, which is our intelligence services as part of government. And the same with fintech in Edinburgh, and as I said, in Cambridge you've got a lot of deep tech, bioscience. In Oxford you have a lot of AI, robotics in Bristol. And I think when you look at tech, there are multi-layers of skills that you require. Now I think what you're seeing, especially when you look at the Phase 8 announcements last week, you're seeing a lot of layers coming together. So augmented reality that were probably hyped a few years ago, they're now becoming a reality, obviously. QR codes, right? So they announced QR codes, which a few years ago you would have like, no, that was a bit of hype there. But actually now they're looking to really integrate that into the system and the platform. So you've got, machine learning, machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, AR, VR, and that is actually, you're seeing specialisms right across the country in that respect.
So right now, Tech City, you run 3 key programs, right?
No, actually, we run about 10 now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So 10 programs. So we have the Digital Business Academy, which we launched with Cambridge University and UCL.
How many of you are on it using Digital Business Academy? There are 15,000 people using it, so...
15, 15.
15, yes.
Oh, there we go. We have 15,000 people in training. So right now we have 15,000 people in training. And so these are courses. It's all online. These are free courses that you can do. And so it's sort of measuring startup metrics, building a digital product, building a digital brand. How do you make the most of your social channels? So these are sort of 101 skills that you need, I think, when you're looking to build a business or starting a business. And the idea is that what we've done there, the proposition is a learning proposition, but then we complement that with ensuring that you are able to apply for rewards when you finish the courses.
Yes.
So that could be mentorship, internships, startup loans, or co-working space.
So let's check it out. It's free. You can use it. And there's plenty of people using it. You did it not alone, but together with partners?
Yeah, that's right. So, as I said, Cambridge University, UCL, and obviously we had people like Matt Braddock from Just Eat, the CMO of Just Eat. We have Sarah Wood, the CEO of Unruly, the CEO of Skimlinks, Alicia, being very much advocates and ambassadors for the program. To obviously, it's obviously a great program, and I think it's democratizing access to digital entrepreneurship. That's the way we see it.
And that's a DBA. Then you have Upscale.
So Upscale is for companies that are scaling fast. The average age is about 3 to 4 years old. Average number of employees about 30 employees, and I think the numbers are 40% month-on-month growth in your user numbers or your financial numbers over the last 6 months. And collectively, they've raised over $200 million for the first cohort.
Yes. And how do you help them?
So that's a very unique program, and that's very much peer-to-peer mentoring. That's where we have the Future 50 CEOs mentoring the next generation of CEOs on Upscale, learning about how to build a product, how to build a culture, how important it is to hire your first 10 people, because that will have a real implication on your culture later on, how to internationalize your product, how to internationalize your team. So it's very much peer-to-peer learning. And then we also then have separate workshop sessions with the executive leadership teams, so CXOs essentially. Yes. So CMOs with CMOs, CIOs with CIOs, and making sure that what's the difference between a data scientist and an algorithm, artificial intelligence algorithm designer? What's the difference? And this has been very helpful. Okay. So that's Upscale.
So they're being coached by the top people from Future 50?
Exactly.
And what is Future 50?
So just to finish off on that point, so Upscale is very much about, and we've seen there's a lot of interest from Europe as to how the program is doing, and that's great to see, because obviously what's great for Europe is great for all of us. Yeah. And these are people who have built successful businesses. So they know what it's like to build a business when your money may be running out, your investment fell through. So that's why it's been very important to get these people in who have been very successful. So we had Nicholas Zenström from Skype. In fact, tonight there's a session right now, not too far from here. There's an Upscale session going on with Andy Grays. Okay. Andy from Grays. I don't know if anyone eats Grays products. No?
Any users of Grays here? Nobody? There's a few.
Good. Okay. Good to see that. So he's doing a session today on building teams. So Future 50 is late stage. So this is for late stage companies. This is for companies that are turning over 5 million and more.
So Just Eat and
Just Eat, Zoopla, Moo.com, so Deliveroo, and again, so it's great to see that obviously we make sure that they're learning from each other. The last summit we had was on international expansion, where we had Skyscanner talking about how to enter South America. And in most cases, you would think about entering South America by putting people on the ground in Brazil, in Argentina. But actually, what he was saying is, you've got to stay lean, and you got to set up your team in Miami and hire someone who can speak Spanish and Portuguese. Now, these little nuggets, these little tips, are so useful when you're expanding in a lean way. Yeah. So that's Future 50, and we have summits, workshops to make sure that people are learning from each other.
Awesome. Now, having
visa scheme too, by the way. So
yes.
So you said about the number of programs. We have I don't know, who's heard of the Technician Visa Scheme?
Anybody here? Yeah, there are a few.
So we run a visa scheme. We're one of 5 competent bodies for the Home Office. And we are, the UK is one of very few countries in the world that has a dedicated visa scheme for digital technology experts, not only commercial experts, but also technical experts. And we run that, and we have seen record number of applications through. So March was our second highest, and November was our highest in terms of number of applications. But March just passed was our second highest in terms of number of applications, applicants coming in.
So let's jump to some questions from you on Slido. There's a question here, after you mentioned the programs like Upscale and Future 50, what are the hot opportunities in tech and digital, and what are the specific needs? John wants to know.
Sorry.
What are the hot opportunities in tech?
Yeah.
And what are the specific needs?
So I think, no surprises here, but obviously the merging of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So it's called machine intelligence.
Yeah.
That's obviously a big area because it's going to automate a number of industries, I would say. And yeah, augmented reality and VR, Internet of Things. I think you're seeing a lot of everything, every device is becoming a sensor of some kind. And so we're seeing quite a rapid rise in the number of Internet of Things companies. And then you're seeing sectors really innovate, so fintech, where you've sort of seen the merging of financial services and technology, health tech.
Yeah.
You saw Babylon raised 60 million last week. They do remote diagnosis. And they're based not very far from, actually they're based in West London. Mm-hmm. So I think what's really amazing about London is that you've got a number of industries that function here. Obviously you've got critical masses of banks, advertising agencies, and so having a community of software developers, software designers, and programmers very close to other industries, you're seeing a lot of a real confluence between these industries. And you don't see that much in other parts. I mean, the Valley, for example, it's very tech heavy. And everywhere you go out to dinner in Palo Alto, and it's just, you're working in tech, you're working in tech, you're working in tech. Whereas here, at least you're seeing, you get to see a lot of people working in tech, but actually there's a lot of people who are artists, designers, bankers, and that confluence is very important to innovation.
That's true. That's true. You're mentioning very often investments and raising funding, which is a very important part of building a business. How involved is Tech City UK in matching good entrepreneurs with investors? You also have Robin Klein, one of the most iconic investors. We saw X-Index on your board. So how important is making sure the right companies raise funding when they need it for Tech City UK?
I think raising, you're raising for a reason, mm-hmm. right? So I think there's a danger of just feeling the pressure to raise.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that you're thinking about what are you raising for, and obviously we just finished a survey looking at entrepreneur needs for investment in the UK, and actually the chemistry between you and the investor is really important. Again, perhaps might be obvious to some of you, but actually don't underestimate the number of meetings that you need to have before an investor feels comfortable in investing in your business, because again, it's a long-term partnership. It's not about the deal, it's not about the raise and the announcement of the raise, it's about how you're going to continue raising, building that business. And again, what's really good versus what we saw 6 years ago is that you now have many, many more funds. You have dozens of funds now in London, which are managed by people who have actually built businesses and know and understand what it is like to build a business, and they have a lot of operational experience, they have a lot of execution experience. So whereas in the past you may have seen that a lot of these funds were managed by bankers to some extent.
This is true. We used to have lots of people who have some exits going into angel investing, but now we see funds like Pro Partners Capital, Brent Hoberman, who built lastminute.com with Michael Birch teamed up, and a bunch of guys, ex-entrepreneurs, Pro Partners Capital, they started investing, and we have a few others, other funds by ex-entrepreneurs being built.
And I think that's a key ingredient of ecosystem density and success, is when you see people building businesses, growing them fast, potentially exiting them, and then obviously reinvesting that money that they've won or made from exiting that business into the next generation.
Yeah.
And that's what makes an ecosystem denser and more critical and more robust over time.
Do you see the culture of giving back and sharing here very strong? For example, yesterday there was a Google Demo Day, and it was a very good event, and we spoke about Sofia, who runs the campus in Madrid, about the founder of Zara, who is now, I think, the second wealthiest guy in the world. A very smart guy, because he introduced the fast fashion concept. And he loves to help. He's supporting a bunch of activities, but the mindset of him mentoring other entrepreneurs is not very familiar to him. How big is this mindset of helping others, giving back to people in the UK here?
This is super important. This is what we've learned from Upscale, is that entrepreneurs who are mentored are more successful. And that's a lot of research, especially from Harvard, showing that. And that's why investors are keen to understand who could be mentoring you. And again, sometimes investors can take on that role, but you'll find that they're probably on multiple boards of multiple companies in their portfolio. So they may not be able to spend the time that you'd like with them, but they will definitely encourage you to connect with people, and you should obviously reach out to people that you admire and see if they will respond. But there's quite a strong pay-it-forward culture here. When I have American friends over, they're pleasantly surprised by how much people are keen to just open up introductions and pass on the goodness and goodwill. There's a lot of strong goodwill here. And actually, funnily enough, I was with one CEO last week. She told me that she's being heavily courted by American investors to move her company to the US, and she said, it's a very strong community here that I do not want to leave. And I think that was very endearing to hear. And again, we may take it for granted, but actually being in a community where you can connect to other people who are facing the same challenges can be very healthy, because actually it can be very lonely being a CEO or an entrepreneur, and you can go through some very tough times. And I think sharing those challenges with other people who are in a similar boat or in a similar situation can be so relieving. And that's what we see on Upscale, is that people share these problems quite openly because they know it's a safe space. And sometimes it's not that easy to open up, especially you come into work and you've got people working for you, and they're looking to you for decisions, and you've got to just make sure that things keep going. And I think having these safe spaces, either with mentors or through programs, is extremely important.
Yes. How many of you have a mentor? Raise your hand. Maybe half of the room. How many of you would like to have a mentor but can't find him? There you go. Okay, a few. Do you have any tips of how to find somebody who would like to mentor you?
So I think, again, do not hesitate in reaching out directly to the people. I mean, be realistic. These obviously, it depends. Do your research. I think people really appreciate when someone has done the research. I mean, I'm sure you've received emails or LinkedIn posts asking for help. And I think it really makes a difference. I really acknowledge people who actually have sort of, done a bit of research and have actually framed the ask. And obviously you're halfway there. And then obviously if they know someone that you know, that obviously helps, because obviously networks really help.
That's true.
And just never give up. Just keep going.
Yeah, there's a famous video with Steve Jobs. When he was 11, he basically took a phone book, and there was no hidden numbers back then. And he called, I think, Mr. Hewlett from HP, and asked him if he has some spare frequency counters. and Mr. Hewlett actually arranged for the next summer for him a summer job in his factory, which Steve Jobs thought it's a paradise. So, and he always keeps saying that too many people just don't ask when they can.
That's right.
So it's, which is strange. Who is your mentor?
So I've had many over the years, and you know, you need mentors for different reasons at different times of your development. But I'm extremely lucky in that I connect with a lot of people in the community. But it's, again, you know, I mean, obviously Steve Jobs, you just mentioned Steve Jobs actually. There's a lot of great videos from him that you can learn from for sure. And I think he was a visionary. I don't know if anyone remembers the front cover of The Economist when he died, but it was The Magician. And I think there was something amazing about Steve Jobs in so many ways, about how he just brought such a new way of looking at things, because obviously he was adopted. He studied calligraphy. I mean, he was just not your usual tech person, and that's what made him so innovative.
True.
So anyone that's different for me is always attractive. How they look at the world, I guess.
You know, I mentioned somebody.
The board. I mean, my board is fantastic,
okay,
and they're extremely supportive. And whenever I've got a situation to talk about, they're very, very keen and supportive. So, you know, and that's, by the way, managing a board is also very important. Managing it, you know, how to, you know, when do you have a board? When do you have a chair? These are things that you can now look up online. We'll be doing more. Actually, yesterday we launched a video series called Founder to Founder. So this is when you have founders asking other founders these types of questions. You know, when is a good time to have a board? When is a good time to have a mentor? When is a good time to have a chair? So I recommend you watch this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to the future. Last year we had this big referendum, and you know, Brexit was decided upon. And we have a question here. Sorry. From Anonymous, and he wants to know, how do you think the tech scene will change after Brexit?
So when I took this role on, I had no idea how dramatic this time and period would be.
It's like
been
that,
3
right?
years.
It was a crazy year.
I've seen an EU referendum, 2 general elections with this one coming up, and a Scottish referendum. So little did I know when taking on the role that we would see, I would see so much change. Look, I mean, it's tough to say right now because obviously we're going through this historical process. What I would say is that London and the UK has developed very fast over the last 6-7 years. And you know, when you look at London, it's 8 times bigger than Amsterdam, I would say, in terms of population. I mean, it's got masses of it's got critical mass of expertise in so many ways. And again, going back to my point earlier, not just in tech, but in other industries, and that confluence is so important to driving innovation. And I think when you're looking at, if you're in government and you're looking at what the situation is, you've got to make sure that you're thinking about how can we make sure that this is as frictionless as possible for entrepreneurs to continue growing and developing businesses. I think one of the biggest attractions here is the climate in terms of the regulatory environment. And obviously you have SEIS and EIS, which has released a lot of capital into the system. And also when you look at intellectual property rights and the patent box, they're very attractive. And I think looking ahead, the UK has to double down on making this country even more competitive, even more at the forefront of digital innovation. And it's going to take visionary people in the community and in industry, because it is a defining moment for Britain. This is very historic, and Britain will have to ask itself, what kind of Britain do we want to be in the future? And in tech, there's rapid change going on. And I think if we as a country act with a vision and be pragmatic, you can see how we can stay at the forefront of this, because as I said before, when you look at the OECD report, it says that we have the highest contribution of GDP from digital. So it's about how we continue that, but knowing that it's going to be a different relationship with the EU.
So having this in mind, what's your priorities for the next 12 months for Tech City UK?
So obviously expanding the Technician visa scheme as much as possible. We've just expanded it by 25%. Obviously, we keep on receiving, we're constant dialogue with the Home Office. They're very keen to understand the types of jobs and the types of roles that are being filled and how that's developing over time. The top countries, so the top countries that we receive applicants from are the US, Canada, Nigeria, South Korea. So what does that mean looking ahead with those countries? India is another one which is very popular, where we have many applicants from. Obviously expanding the Digital Business Academy. We want more learners, we want more students building new businesses. But just constantly being in dialogue with government and making sure that the voices of entrepreneurs are heard. And that's why we have several roundtables with ministers, with entrepreneurs from all across the UK, making sure that their voices are heard. And obviously, I don't know if you've read Tech Nation 2017, but that was our largest survey to date. That's 2,700 respondents from across the UK. Almost half of those were company CEOs of varying sizes between 10 and 100 employees. And all that information was analyzed and synthesized and presented back to government. And if you look at Karen Bradley's, who's the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sports, she actually based her speech on the findings of that report. And obviously, that was on the back of the digital strategy, which they announced at the beginning of March. So if you want to know more about what government is thinking, I really urge you to read the digital strategy that was announced at the beginning of March. And then obviously the industrial strategy that was announced in January as well by the government. So,
okay. Yep. Now talking about the government, which other organizations in the government are you working with? Are you involved in helping entrepreneurs taking part in trade missions abroad, the UKTI, or how are you helping the other way around, not just bringing top talent as part of the visa program, but helping companies expand?
Yeah, so the Department of International Trade is very active right now. They organized a FinTech conference only just last week or the week before, and they will be doing more and more trade missions. In fact, I was supposed to be on a trade mission to Israel in 2 weeks, but because of the election, and that was actually with the Minister for Science and Innovation. But because of the elections, you have what's called PURDA, which is where the government cannot make any announcements in the run-up to the election. But the Department of International Trade does have trade missions to CES, to South by Southwest. We did one this year. We did one last year as well. But there'll be more of that. And obviously the Department of International Trade is very keen to see more and more tech companies strike international deals with other countries. That actually happened in India with the Prime Minister when she visited there in November. But there'll be the Mobile World Congress. So look at gov.uk if you haven't. There's also London and Partners who do a lot of this through the BHere, the BHere, the international business program from the BHere. So again, they take cohorts of companies in, depending on the size of your company, depending on the speed of growth of your company, and then they connect you in with potential investors or potential buyers of your service.
Yeah. How many trade missions do you personally take part in per year?
Not that many, actually. South by Southwest, we went to China in January, maybe just a handful per year. There's many more that go on, obviously, but we don't get involved in every single one of them. And we don't organize them ourselves. That's the Department of International Trade or organizations like London and Partners.
We have a question here from Tim. What government policies are you most interested in right now? How will they impact startups?
So I think obviously the SEIS I spoke about, EIS I spoke about, and obviously with SEIS, if you look at, the cap is 150K, and obviously that's to do with state aid rules from the EU. So who knows where that might go next in terms of the caps. Again, depending on what deal the British government strikes with the EU. But there is, I'd like to see more being done with universities. So I think we hear from startup CEOs who come out of universities, especially from spin-offs or PhD students who are looking to start up a company, they find that actually the university wants to take quite a large share of their business.
Yeah.
And too much, in fact. In fact, so much that it alienates investors to invest in the company in terms of IP.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to see universities being a little bit more proactive, a little bit more understanding of how intellectual property gets commercialized, so that it's attractive to follow-on investors that are coming out of the university.
And is it a common problem for all universities, or is Cambridge, Oxford?
I mean, they vary. Obviously, Cambridge University has a lot of experience in doing this.
They do, yeah.
Which is why, their understanding, their sophistication of understanding is a lot higher. But then you've got new funds coming out of Southampton University, for example, where you have the Web Science Institute, and you have a new fund that's launching called 021. Again, that's in partnership with the local university. It's in partnership with the local economic partnership, which is the local council. And they'll be very cognitive of what share the university would be keen to take as part of the company, so it doesn't alienate the follow-on investors. So these are very interesting times for universities, as digital innovation can happen anywhere now, right?
Yes. And in terms of the Brexit, being on the road to hit us, there's a question here from Anonymous in regards to Brexit. What is UK government and Tech City doing to attract and retain tech talent? Which is a very good question, because you have Berlin and cities like that who are trying to get a piece of the pie.
I think Brexit or no Brexit, I think again the UK has to continue developing ways in which it is unique when it comes to digital innovation. If you look at the amount of critical mass that you have in artificial intelligence or machine learning, one source published not only very recently said that we have the highest number of artificial intelligence companies in Europe right now.
True.
Because
the main
of the
company of
universities.
Google, DeepMind is based here.
Exactly.
The main company of Microsoft, SwiftKey, is based
exactly. Here. And so the government's very aware of this. And if I think what sometimes people underestimate is what happened back in June. Sometimes when you're running an election, you have time to make sure that you're preparing for winning an election. And obviously with the EU referendum, you had a new administration come in overnight. Yeah. And what we've definitely noticed is that the current administration has definitely developed its thinking very fast around the importance of technology, and also understanding that actually it's about future-proofing the economy, because actually tech is going to become an integral part of the economy. This is not about, tech does not operate in a privileged bubble. And I think that's the point. I think, innovations that you see here become an integral part of our daily living. So the government understands very clearly that attracting talent from around the world is super important, because obviously there's only so much, the speed of growth is so fast. When we looked at the numbers in TechNation 2017, the actual digital economy is growing 50% faster than the wider economy, right? It's twice as fast as the wider economy. So, and there's only so much homegrown talent that you can tap into right now. But there's a real focus on skills. If you look at the digital strategy, there are 7 strands to it, one of which is digital skills, another one is on international talent, connectivity, data, and so forth. So I think, they're very actively listening. And we've been visited by a number of European governments of all sorts who are very keen to emulate the success that they've seen here. in terms of policies, in terms of programs. So it's about what else do we need to be doing. So right now there's a very strong focus on scaling companies, strong focus on diversity, because that's one of your critical success factors when it comes to ecosystem development. So startup creation is one thing, and we're probably at the generational high point in the UK in terms of startup creation. But now we also need to look at how to scale companies. And obviously Sherry Kutu has done a lot of great work in this space with her Scale Up report, which looks at talent and infrastructure, investment. And so the government, again, is looking at all this right now.
So from starting to scaling. Now, there's a question here regarding startups. What are your main considerations when valuing an early-stage tech startup? I don't know if you valuing tech startups or not, but the question is, what do you take into consideration when valuing a tech startup?
I mean, I think investors are basically investing in the future of your business and what potential it will have. That's really it. I mean, you can give them the timelines and how you will spend the money to what you will do with the money, but ultimately they're essentially investing in what potential does your company have to withstand not only competitors but actually to win, acquire customers, and obviously ultimately be profitable, right? Yeah. That's what they're investing in.
Great. Now, before we finish today, we have a few minutes left. We'll be mixing questions from Slido. Whether you are here in person or you're watching us live on live stream, you can also raise your hand if you have any questions. So please prepare some questions. We have a small present for the winner of the smartest question, which Gerard will be deciding. Gerard, will you tech people help minorities get into technologies? Is the next question.
Yeah, so I mean, the academy is very much based on that principle, which is democratizing access to digital entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have any qualifications to get onto the academy.
Okay.
You can see courses there you can start them online. You'll be tested online, and you go at your own pace. That's why we love it so much.
That's very useful. Now, you with your head of TechCity UK, where do you see the UK tech sector in, let's say, 5 years' time in the future?
Yeah.
And we're talking way beyond the election this June. Basically, what's coming in the future, and how can UK stay competitive and on top of the world?
Yeah. So last year, 6.8 billion pounds was invested in UK technology, which was actually almost 3 times more than the nearest European country.
Yeah,
that was France.
Clear lead.
Sorry?
It's a clear lead in Europe.
A clear lead, yeah, exactly. But that's quite substantial, it's quite significant. And actually over the last 5 years, it's about 28 billion pounds. And the next nearest country was around 14 billion. So almost, it's twice as much. And obviously that investment has gone into funding companies, funding entrepreneurs to build their businesses. And so you've got real critical mass. So as I said, it's a very multi-layered, I mean, London, let's talk specifically about London. It's a very multi-layered city. And in that respect, you've got more people now who are non-UK than in New York, right? So it's 40% are non-UK born, whereas in New York it's about 34%. I'm not sure what it is in the Valley, but I mean that's a great, as I said, diversity is a great driver of ecosystem robustness.
This is true. We had the example. I'm from Slovakia. Gerard is actually from Malta, right?
Yeah, so I'm half French, half Maltese, and so that's why the government, the UK understands that. The UK government understands this, and so they'll be looking to do everything they can, I presume, to get the best deal with the EU. So, attracting the best and brightest talent from around the world will be key. So how do you make sure that you strike the right balance between homegrown talent, and now you have a lot more initiatives going on in developing homegrown talent, Founders for Schools, App for Good. So I'm a mentor for Apps for Good. Has anyone heard of Apps for Good? Yeah, I mean, that's for 11 to 17-year-olds building apps in schools and then entering a competition. There are now Albright, which is an investment platform for female entrepreneurs. Again, one of the very few that I've seen around Europe. So I think it's making sure that we're always at the forefront of the change that we're seeing. And managing change is one thing that any country will need to do very well.
This is true. It's true. Okay, let's take some questions from the audience. I'm going to give you my phone, so please stand up. Tell us who you are and what your question is.
Hi there. Put my beer down. My name's Alex Gordon. Being from Scotland, proud Scot, I'm just interested in what you think other cities in the UK can do to keep up with the growth of London as a startup hub.
Yep. So thanks for that. So we took Tech Nation on tour. So we came back from a tour last week. Actually, one of our last events was in Edinburgh, and this was about 2 weeks ago. And we had about 1,000 people online watching, and we had 150 people at Codebase. I don't know if you've heard of Codebase, but Codebase is, again, it has about 80 portfolio companies based in Edinburgh, doing very, very well. And Edinburgh really gets ecosystem development, I would have to say, compared to, for example, Glasgow. And you've got FanDuel, a large tech unicorn, and then obviously you got Skyscanner, which did very well. And I think what you have there, which probably is the envy of some other cities, is that you have heroes and success stories like Skyscanner and FanDuel. And what I heard was being done there is that they were sharing their knowledge, those companies were sharing their knowledge with the next generation of companies. And that, again, that paid forward mentality is something that other cities should do and want to do. And they want to see role models. I think that's what people want to see in their local vicinity, because I think if you think that, well, if these people can do it, then so can I. That's very important to get people really excited about what to do and where to start a company. So it's one of the areas.
I'm too tired. My name's Yadu, and thank you both for this. You have Donald Trump, sorry for using his name, who's come into power. He's talking about America first, and everybody else he doesn't care two hoots. Particularly from a investor perspective, there is some amount of American money here. Yep. Post Donald Trump taking full control and getting out of NAFTA, getting out of TPP, etc. Do you think, from where you're sitting, you're probably at 6,000 feet and you have more visibility than all of us, will US VCs start to pack their bags and move back?
Wow, I have no idea. I don't see why they would want to do that. Again, investors are looking for a return, and that return is based on the agility of the talent teams that they're investing in, the returns that they can see based on the growth numbers that they're seeing. So if the environment is conducive for entrepreneurs to build great businesses, then why would they pack their bags and go somewhere else?
So you don't think it's going to happen?
Well, again, it's about making sure that the climate is conducive to starting and growing a digital business. Mm-hmm. And that's very important. So why would, if that changes, obviously, then yes, okay. We can see what happens next. But I think again, that's what's been one of the greatest strengths of the UK ecosystem, is that the environment, the regulatory environment, and the availability of, as I said, you have probably over 60% of VC funds are coming through London in Europe. This is a whole process that's going through right now, and why would they do that?
It's still happening here, yes. On this note, we have another question from Anon. What advice would you give to an individual who is looking for investment for startup of their business?
Advice on looking for investment?
Yes, to a startup.
Yeah, so it depends on the startup itself, B2C, B2B. Now you obviously have got even more sophisticated investors in investing in specific areas of the sectors, whether it's fintech, health tech.
So let's say you quit Tech City UK and start a business in music, for example. Where would you look for investment?
So it depends. So again, angels. So angels that have had experience in developing a media business or a digital marketing business, because I think there's quite a lot of correlation there. So that'd be, so either CEOs who have exited and done well and are now becoming angel investors.
Yes.
There's also the UK BAA that you can go to, the UK British.
This is Angels Association.
Using your networks, and then looking at specific, VCs who actually specialize in digital media.
Yeah.
Passion Capital is one that I can think of. White Star Capital, Atomico, Sweet Capital. That's the venture capital from King.com. So yeah.
So you look for smart money, angels, and then VCs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, it's a partnership.
We have another question from here.
My name is Brian Taylor.
Hi.
I really do understand the importance of the digital economy, and next year the GDPR, the government privacy legislation, or European privacy legislation comes out. We all do really smart things with analysis of data. Do you see that having an impact at all on the growth of the digital economy, or do you see it tidying certain loose ends up?
So, yeah, GDPR comes into play in May 2018. I think that's right. I think a lot of companies are very aware of this and what they're going to have to do. And if you're a business, you would definitely have a very good lawyer who understands intellectual property and data protection. So I'd really recommend that if you don't understand what GDPR is, you look online, and because it will affect every digital business. I think it's EU legislation around data protection of consumers, and it will affect digital marketing, digital advertising businesses, ad tech businesses, and yeah, I mean, I think in those instances, if you don't understand that situation after doing your research online, make sure that you look for a good lawyer. And there are tons of lawyers here who understand the space very, very well.
This is true. We have a few in room as well.
Yeah.
Last question from the audience.
Thank you very much. It's Mohammed. I'm a immigration lawyer with a technical background. I mean, we're struggling with startups coming to London and would like to hire foreign talent with restrictions on the tier 2. And I mean, what kind of, you have different vision. I mean, we understand that tech, the tier 1 entrepreneur, exceptional talent is helping people to come to start business. But what about startups already in London and would like to hire foreign talent?
Yep. So just to be specific on this one, so it's exceptional talent, but it's also exceptional promise. So if you are looking to hire a PhD who has a special, a unique talent, a unique perspective in data science, you should consider him through this route, which is the tier 1. And again, it's not just on technical expertise, but it's also on commercial expertise. So if you're looking to hire a CFO that has had experience of taking a company to IPO, now, there aren't as many of those people in the UK versus the US. So we understand that you would want to look perhaps at the US to bring that person over. This route actually allows for that. So this route is not just for technical talent, but it's also for commercial talent. And as I said, those changes took place over a year ago. And then that's why we're seeing record number of applications coming through. And it's not just for investors or entrepreneurs looking to set up here. It's exactly for what you've just asked about.
Okay.
So, a good example is an algorithm, artificial design, algorithm designer, data scientist, UX, UI experts, that sort of thing.
Thanks for this. Last question from Slido is, do you believe, this is a very honest question, do you believe Brexit will benefit startups or hinder growth of startups?
So I think with Brexit, I would say must-come opportunity, that's how I would definitely put it. And again, it's going to take, I think again, it's a very historical moment, and it's going to have to take every single one of us in this community to think about how to recalibrate and reset what's going on. And I think that's really important. And again, true entrepreneurs are the ones who face challenges every day and find solutions all the time to those challenges and rise up to the challenge and rise up in situations of adversity and challenging times. So I'm an optimist. I'm not a naive optimist, but I'm definitely an optimist in us rising to the challenge that we have here.
So it sounds like you're not happy about our Brexit, but you want to be positive and you want to make the best out of it.
Absolutely. I think again, I'm an optimist at heart, and I voted, like probably many of you in the room, to stay. But clearly, something happened. The EU referendum was a historical moment, an event that took place last year, and clearly a recalibration is now required if we are indeed exiting out of the EU, which looks like we are. Obviously, general election withstanding. So I think Brexit or no Brexit, I think it's very important that when you're building a business, you're in the best place possible, whether it's connections, networks, policies around investment, policies around talent, and making sure that you're feeding that information back to organizations like us so that we're then feeding it back to government. As I said, government is actively listening and is very engaged on what they're seeing and hearing. So yeah, with Brexit must come opportunity.
Okay, thank you for this. My last question, Gerard, is do you...
Keep saying last question. It's okay, it's fine.
So
It's fine, don't worry.
from the audience, from Slido, and now for me is, you mentioned Barbican. And there is an arty side of you, so what's your job at the Barbican? And tell us something interesting about what do you try to do to help there?
So I joined the Barbican in January of this year, and the Barbican is just here. Who's been to the Barbican? Anyone? That's
Who has
great,
not been to the
fantastic.
Barbican?
Who's not? That's another way of putting it.
3 or 4 people.
Well, I think it's in the heart of London. It's in the heart of the City of London, and it's actually part financed by the City of London Corporation, which is it's a corporation that's over 400 years old. It's been here for many, many centuries. And they're doing all sorts of interesting stuff, right? So they just had an exhibition on the Japanese house. And again, if my memory serves me right, in the Second World War, the US pretty much destroyed most of Tokyo. Well, 50% of Tokyo was destroyed. Is it Tokyo or Osaka? I can't remember. One of those Japanese cities. And in this exhibition, you'll see the renovation that took place. They just rose to the challenge of developing new architecture and new houses and new living spaces. And that was quite inspiring. There's a Richard Moss exhibition. He's a photographer who actually uses long-range cameras and lenses to film all sorts of interesting places. Could be refugee camps or aircraft carriers, American aircraft carriers, and it's just fascinating how he does that. So I sit on the board. I obviously provide a lot of digital know-how and advice as much as possible. There will be some interesting exhibition, and there'll be an interesting exhibition happening in 2019. I can't say more around technology, which will be hopefully here in the future. So yes, come down.
Stay the date. On this note, please join me in thanking Gerard Grech from Tech City UK.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Marion. It's probably worth giving Marion a round of applause, not only because he's a great guy, but actually for doing these sessions. And you've been doing them for how long now? For at least
3.5 years now.
3.5 years. I mean, it's great. I mean, you're just basically getting people to share their wisdom, their knowledge with everybody every so often. So a round of applause for Marion. Why not?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gerard.
Thanks so much.
And before we finish, I hope Gerard will stay a few minutes later, so we can also say hi if you want to. Before we finish, I want to say a few words. First of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for our partners. We have Louis Silken here, a law firm which is working with us, and a bunch of you as well. We have Tim in the room, who is a partner at Louis Silken. Tim, where are you? Tim is over there with a few colleagues, so feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions.